Today we're diving into the world of the Hungry Girl brand, which has become synonymous with low-calorie eating and diet tips. But as we peel back the layers, we'll explore a broader conversation, one about the impact about diet culture, and some concerns that I had after going down like a rabbit hole, specifically about the Hungry Girl and founder. If all that sounds good to you, let's go. Hi folks, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Kat. I'm a licensed registered dietitian nutritionist, and on this channel I like to talk about weight inclusive and weight neutral focused approaches to health, as well as diving into scammy and, in my opinion, unethical nutrition related businesses, products, mostly nutrition related MLMs, and other fear mongering nutrition related claims. So we're talking about the Hungry Girl, right? Before we get into that, let's hear a quick message from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by me. I know that is cringe. Go ahead and skip past this if you want. This is going to be really brief. If you're moving away from diet culture and if you're seeking support from a weight neutral kind of community, or simply looking for a space filled with nourishing insights, the Unlock Nutrition and Food Freedom community might be for you. As a side note, weight neutral means that we're focused on actions and practices that emphasize prioritizing nourishment and joyful movement and a healthy relationship with food regardless of weight. There is week daily prompts around building a healthy relationship with food. There's a resource library where we cover things like meal prep, but also emotional eating, cravings, so much more. We have weekly recipes. There's a monthly Q&A session where you can get your nutrition questions answered. There's also a monthly live seminar / group coaching. Right now it's mostly like a seminar just because it's a small community. And there's also monthly challenges. So like, for example, this month we're doing a cravings mapping challenge. It's a very small community, but I just saw a need for people who wanted to move away from diet culture, but also still want to prioritize certain aspects of their health and wellness and overall nourishment. You can check it out and join by using the link down in the description box. Okay, back to the video. So the brand, it was created by a woman named Lisa Lillian. Now, I believe she has made an impact on dieting culture with the numerous kind of books, cookbooks, and diet books. We'll talk more about that. But she has just provided a wide array of recipes and diet tips and food swaps essentially aimed at reducing calorie intake. Now, despite the popularity, Lisa Lillian does not have a formal education background in nutrition. She has referred to herself as a foodologist. On her website, though, it says Hungry Girl is not a nutritionist, she is just hungry. Which, fair enough, we'll get more into that in a little bit. There is absolutely nothing wrong with someone who does not have a formal nutrition background giving just support and having nourishing intake. Questions arise though about the depth of the diet tips and the accuracy of the information provided though. Now, I was aware of Hungry Girl like as a brand overall, but I was not a big follower. I actually used to have one of her books. It was titled Recipes and Survival Strategies for Guilt-Free Eating in the Real World. And actually I've gotten a copy of that book for free at a booth. That was at a food and nutrition conference and expo, and she was actually at the booth. I did end up meeting her and getting that book signed. I was aware of the Hungry Girl, but it was, again, not something that I had followed. That was kind of cool, but I have since decluttered that. You're just going to have to take my word for it. I don't know why I would lie about something like that. And I had actually forgotten that I had met her until I started to prepare for this video. And I was looking at the different books that she had, and I remembered that specific one that I had and that she was able to sign. I wouldn't make that up, but I tend to second guess myself. So like maybe it was someone else who was signing books, but like I don't know who else would sign her book. I'm like 99.99% that it was her. But anyway, I did end up decluttering that book just because it didn't seem that I would really like benefit from the information in there. And that's 100% zero shade to anybody who has found her books valuable, especially for like the cookbooks, even just getting recipes. I think that you can find really cool things in just random cookbooks. So like absolutely, if you've gotten value from her work, that's great. I'm just talking about my experience and how I had that book and why I don't have it anymore. My experience doesn't take away from anybody who did enjoy them. Now, I had come across the relationship or the connection between Lisa Lillian and Dan Schneider, who was a producer and writer and creator of a lot of different Nickelodeon shows, including The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Victorious, and more. I found about that connection from Sloan's video. I will have that linked down below. I think Sloan can sometimes get a little conspiratorial on his his channel, so don't take this as like a blanket endorsement of his whole channel. But I do think he's done some great work, especially exposing people like Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon and all the issues surrounding them. Now, I'm talking about this specifically because, in my opinion, the link between Lisa and Dan, it underscores like a broader conversation of intertwining worlds between like health, influence, and also lifestyle. In my opinion, it is crucial to just recognize the collective impact that people can have on culture, and in this case, diet culture, and the result of that coming from a lot of just connections that people have. So as I mentioned, Lillian is the wife of Dan Schneider, who has been at the center of a lot of issues, toxic work environments on the set and behind the scenes at Nickelodeon. Several former actors who are now adults have spoken up about these situations and how he created like adult-like scenarios for children on their shows, inappropriate jokes. Now, this video, I'm not going to talk on him specifically, but if you want more information about him specifically, check out the documentary Quiet on Set or Alexa Nikolas's YouTube channel. She is a former character on Zoe 101. So for a little bit of history, I'm pulling a lot of this information specifically from her Wikipedia page. I know that is not a quality source. I want to talk more about the dietary nutrition related concerns, but I'm just giving some background. It's not central to the video's main argument, so I hope that's okay. So she married Dan Schneider in 2002, and she had met him at the Nickelodeon studios in the 1990s. So before launching Hungry Girl as a brand, Lisa held significant roles in the digital and media landscape. She served as the online executive producer for TV Land and took on the role of director of convergence development at Nickelodeon Online. And then following this, she worked as a producer for new media at Telepictures, which was a division of Warner Brothers. Now, in 2004, a couple years later, Lillian decided to embark on a new venture, and she created the Hungry Girl brand. Now, it began as a weekly email newsletter titled Tips and Tricks for Hungry Chicks, focusing on providing readers with recipes and life hacks. Now, over time, her list grew significantly, and now she has 14 books. They're mostly cookbooks, and she does have one that says Drop 10 Pounds in 4 Weeks.
This is my 9th book, but my other books are typically recipe books, and this is the very first diet book that I have put out. Now, this is a 4-week weight loss plan that will be great for anyone who wants to lose weight, okay, no matter what.
So as I mentioned before, she describes herself, or has described herself, as a foodologist because of not having a background in nutrition or in health. Her bachelor's is in communication, which I feel like she's really good. She's been able to put that into play to use to have had her company grow like that and to have all of those different like opportunities. Now, Hungry Girl offers an enticing promise. Eat what you love, but have a lighter version. Now, on the surface, this can sound like a dream come true for a lot of people. However, as I was starting to just gather my thoughts for this video, I started to have just some concerns kind of pop up. There's a primary emphasis on calorie counts of things, and the emphasis seems to be on calorie reduction rather than like nourishment. Now, this can really oversimplify the complexities of nutrition and health wellness overall. The second big red flag for me, and this is not just Hungry Girl brand, this is like pervasive throughout diet culture. We've seen it so many times, but non-experts significantly impacting the culture around food, influencing people's perceptions of what is healthy and what is not, and their eating habits. Now, I've spoken about this specific kind of issue, concern of mine before, not specifically with Hungry Girl, but just in general, in the world of influencers regarding like nutrition recommendations, diet tips, things like that. And sometimes I'll have people comment, kind of the gist of it is gatekeeping of nutrition, because I'm not a fan of people who don't have a like background in nutrition and health to be providing nutrition and health information, that is like somehow gatekeeping. Now, I believe that everyone has a right to practice if they want to practice, and I also recognize the just lack of accessibility for a lot of people to even get into programs to practice. My concern starts to come into play when we're talking about the impact that it has on other people, on potentially large groups of people, and the harm, i.e. the toxicities within diet culture. It can perpetuate these kind of harmful behaviors and actions surrounding health and wellness, food and body image, and we often see that leading to cycles of restrictive eating, a weight obsession, and some negative impacts on mental health and self-esteem even, especially when we start to see that yo-yo dieting or that like dieting cycle. Diet culture will often prioritize unrealistic body, like aesthetic goals over genuine health and wellness. Much more of that over having a healthier relationship with food. The real issue isn't that we might be getting like not exactly right advice. The main concern is like how influential these voices are, how influential they are in shaping what we think about or how we think about health and food. And the impact that people like Lisa Lillian have, it's huge. People like Lisa Lillian have shaped so many people's view on health. And I know that puts a lot of responsibility on people's shoulders, but that's why I think it's important for consumers to like be aware of where their nutrition information is coming from. And while Hungry Girl offers like lower calorie options, the brand's approach again emphasizes calories over nourishment. And I do think this is a great example of it's maybe not so much what you know, but who you know. That is in no way meant to undermine the work that she has put into these projects, the multiple projects within Hungry Girl. As I was mentioning before, talking about her history and just the various connections to media productions and like a lot of people who really shape what consumers see, I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of connections there. Like, yes, you have to do the work to put, pen to paper to make those cookbooks, but for it to get as much publicity, brand deals, things like that, there's some connections there, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to play a clip from Sloane's video that I mentioned earlier, and I just have some thoughts.
Reveal the calorie counts for the little tiny pork slider.
395 calories
3 grams of fat
for one of those.
For one of those. Now, my version, I think you should clap for this. Woo! Again, a fraction of the sugar. I lighten this up by only using light mayo, and instead of frying them, they're baked. They're crispy, crunchy, and delicious. And my calorie counts, 165 calories and 4 grams of fat.
Okay, so first off, 395 calories, that is not an amount that I would be surprised about for that food. There was a person who, when they revealed that, they seemed to be surprised of that it was so much, but it's really not. That is what I would consider for myself. That is an amount that I found provide me with energy and nourishment and just overall satisfaction in a meal. Now that can look different for other people, but for me, just looking at these, I would much rather choose, if I was choosing, and most people, especially adults, would benefit from having a lunch and meal that would provide them with 395 calories versus 165 calories. And it's not to demonize the 165 calorie option, they are both neutral. But what I am saying, the point of what I am saying is that yes, you can choose either or, but for a meal, for providing nourishment, it is okay to choose that one that has the higher calories. Let's say the side of that was some grilled veggies. There you have a meal that's providing carbohydrates, protein, fats, and you also have the additional carbohydrates and fiber with those veggies on the side. All I'm saying is that if I had that 165 calories, I'm going to be hungry in a couple hours. If that. Again, they're both neutral. Now, on the flip side, sometimes I do want a smaller meal or a snack, and I might choose that other option, that 165 calorie option. So I can see contexts in which I would choose either or, but what I'm not a fan of as a registered dietitian and someone who helps people to leave dieting culture and build and strengthen a healthy relationship with food, I'm just not a fan of the choose this versus that kind of presentation of those. You can choose either, but it's not like a eat this, not that kind of thing. A good, bad kind of thing. Now let's dive into her diet book. So it says each day consists of 3 meals and 3 snacks, totaling 1,300 calories. There's also a 1,500 calorie option for those who are more than 75 pounds overweight, are vigorous exercisers, or feel that 1,300 calorie target is too aggressive for them. Now, 1,300 calories is low. 1,500 calories is low. She has that note of like even 1,500 calorie, that option for people who are more than 75 pounds overweight, which that is just like randomly kind of thrown in there, but also for vigorous exercisers. Even if you're not exercising, most people, like 1,500 is still low. A daily intake of 1,300 calories, that is significantly low, especially for the average adults, just like basic intake needs, basic physiological functions and daily activities. Consuming 1,300 calories a day does not adequately support the energy requirements for most people, for a lot of people, even the 1,500, even before accounting for physical activity. It is crucial that calorie recommendations should take more into consideration. I feel like just having those two options, 1,300 and 1,500, is not enough. It's not enough. You need a more like comprehensive kind of tool for recommending a specific calorie amount for a person. If you wanted to focus on calories, which is not something that I focus on with the people who I work with. So this book, it's laid out, there's like an intro, and then it goes into the meal plan. It's like every day is laid out, and then you have different options for your meal times, which meal you want to choose. And then it provides you recipes, and then after that, some like diet tips. Now, per Sloan, that video that I mentioned earlier, there has been some controversy regarding the accuracy of calorie counts for the recipes that she provides. Apparently some people have done the math on various recipes of hers and it doesn't really add up. Now, as I was looking through this book, I wasn't spending much time looking at the calorie counts. I did check out 3 of them though, and 2 of them were pretty spot on, but one of them that I did choose, it was a little bit off. So it had 27 grams of carbs, so multiply that by 4 because it's 4 calories per gram. It's not like that clean on that number, like it's like 3.78 or something like that, but we round it to 4 per gram of carbs. Same thing with protein. It's a little bit off in fat, but they're rounded to the 4, 4, and the 9 per gram of carb, protein, and fat, respectively. So we have 27 grams of carbs times 4, that's 108, and then 5 grams of protein times 4, that's 20. So it's 28 calories off, which isn't that much. Again, I'm not a fan of calorie counting. Something important to note though is that fiber is a type of carbohydrate, depending on like the type and stuff, but typically like overall it's not fully digested or like absorbed by the body in the way that like a glucose molecule is. So it contributes overall to less caloric intake or energy. However, for the sake of just simplicity in calorie counting, typically fiber is just kind of lumped into there and we still count the calories based on the total grams of carbohydrates, regardless of fiber. Like some people will do a different calculation for fiber, but some of the other recipes that I saw of hers didn't. So if that was used for this one, it's not like standardized across the recipes from the same book. But that was just kind of a side note, just for your information kind of thing. It's a point, but it's not one of my big concerns when it comes to Hungry Girl. Now, in the tips area, she does briefly discuss the topic of trigger foods. She describes them as, what exactly are trigger foods? Well, they are different from person to person, but one thing remains the same across the board. Once you start eating them, it's extremely difficult to stop. They might send you into an eating frenzy or cause you to crave more food for the entire day. Everyone has different triggers. For some people, like me, it's salty snacks like crackers and chips. I've gone through an entire multi-serving bag of chips in one sitting. Yep, this happens to me too. For others, it's chocolates and sweets. Everyone has a friend who can inhale an entire bag of M&Ms or a pint of ice cream, or both. I typically try to avoid my trigger foods, but when I do treat myself to them, I use some tricks. First, single serving options. Since I love nuts and can't be trusted around big bags of them, I keep 100 calorie packs handy. Mini bags of 94% fat-free microwave popcorn are great for popcorn fans. If your favorite snack doesn't come packaged in single servings, try this next tip. Break large bags into mini bags/containers with a single portion in each. This totally helps. In fact, I recommend doing it as soon as you get back from the store. Keep those giant snack bags out of your home whenever possible. It continues on. Pop a mint or a piece of sugar-free mint gum right after you have a serving of your trigger food. The mintiness can help stop you from craving more of that food. The fresh breath is an added bonus. This one works extremely well. I have some thoughts about this. So overall, the recommendation of having snacks in individual kind of serving sizes, I think that sometimes that can help people to kind of be more mindful, intentional, slow down, and become more aware of certain fullness cues. Overall, to me, and you might have a different opinion, they don't seem to, they kind of miss the mark when it comes to like trigger foods and cravings. So focusing on single serving packages or like manipulating the environment in that way to avoid certain trigger foods, that is definitely an option that some people like implement. That typically will help manage the consumption in the short term though, but that does nothing to address underlying issues such as like why that person, what is a connection, what is a chain link that is happening to where they get to that point. That is the outcome, that is the behavior. What was going on 30 minutes before, an hour before, 12 hours before, the day before. There can be a lot of different factors that play a role into those kind of situations. It's kind of like the viewpoint. That viewpoint is more about control versus the other viewpoint where we really try to understand what the body is telling us. A more sustainable approach would be first to approach that food with neutrality. You know, food isn't inherently good or bad. It's just the context determines what is like more beneficial, you know, for that situation. But then also recognizing that cravings can stem from a variety of different places. It could be intentional or unintentional food deficits, like a caloric deficit if you're unintentionally not eating enough, or intentionally because you're on a diet. A habit-related response, it could be related to dehydration or lack of quality or quantity of sleep. Basically, cravings and the kind of like experience that she was describing, it's neutral and it just provides us with an opportunity, a chance to learn more about our bodies and bring more mindfulness to the situation, to the context of what may have caused that kind of response or like that desire. That's going to be so much more beneficial for that person than just popping in a mint. Like if that person is just like willpowering through their cravings and they're choosing to have that mint every day at a specific time and just kind of going with that as best as they can, we could help that in the first place. We could help like reduce that by maybe looking at the rest of their day and seeing maybe if they're not eating enough at lunch, or maybe if they're getting like, sometimes I see people who with the best intentions with lunch, they'll choose something that's like high in protein. They might have like some avocado with that, maybe some like veggies, and that's it. There's like no carbs, barely any carbs in like the veggies. That's like their main carb source for lunch. They're probably gonna have some cravings in the afternoon, oftentimes for things that are higher in carbohydrates. So if we can get ahead of that and maybe make lunch a little bit more overall nourishing, they might not have that kind of trigger as she mentioned it. And you can take that and like move that around to various parts of the day, how some people have that experience like after coming home from work. Maybe there's other things that compound that as well, stress relief. So many other factors come into play. I don't expect her to like add all of that nuance to the book in that specific area because again, she does not have a formal background. At that same time though, the tips that she is giving is very much, it's adding noise. It doesn't address the actual issues of why those triggers that she mentioned are happening. Now, she did have one dietitian like approve this book. Maybe she should have had more several different dietitians. But moving on, overall, the media plays a huge role in how we see food, how we approach food, and what we consider to be healthy eating. When you look at large platforms like Hungry Girl, we see a trend where eating habits are so often like simplified into numbers. This whole situation to me really just highlights being aware of just nutrition and diet noise, and just how crucial it is to be able to sift all that information, because there's so much diet noise. Overall, I found it just extremely interesting to learn more about Hungry Girl as a brand and Lisa Lillian, to learn about the connection to Dan Schneider. You know, Nickelodeon, I grew up with watching Nickelodeon and Disney and PBS when we didn't have cable at certain points. In my opinion, Lisa Lillian, similar to what Sloan said in his video, was a person who was on the sidelines. She had to be aware, like maybe not everything brought to light, but at least the stuff with her husband and like the whole foot thing with the kids. I don't know, maybe not. It's just a really interesting connection. And just not a fan of that family. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can strive for health without subscribing to diet culture. I'll see you later. Bye.